President Stubb, you traveled to Mar-a-Lago and you teamed up for a round of golf with President Trump. My first question was, who of you is better?
I think we played on the same team and it was best ball. So basically we had a team of 5 and the 2 best scores counted, and many of our scores with the president counted. So it was probably the best presidential team in the world.
Did he give you any feedback on your performance?
Yeah, I mean, golf is a really nice social sport. So basically when your friend hits a good shot, you always give credit. So we had a lot of that. And I think, interesting enough, I've always said this, that in golf, you learn about the personality of another person better than anywhere else, even on the first hole. And it was a very amicable round and very encouraging in many ways.
What did you learn about President Trump's current approach and plan to end the war in Ukraine?
Well, of course, when you spend 7 hours with the President of the United States, we had breakfast, played a round of golf, and then lunch. A lot of it is social, very amicable. And then sometimes we talk shop. And I came out of that 7 hours feeling that the President of the United States is running out of patience with Russia and with President Putin. And of course, the next day, he gave rather tough statements on Putin. But in diplomacy, you take it one day at a time, one step at a time. But I left the golf encouraged.
You said in an interview that President Trump asked you about Putin's trustworthiness. Did you sense any insecurity on Trump's part regarding Putin?
No, none whatsoever. I think what you see is what you get with President Trump, and you need to understand when he gets serious, he's serious. We've seen that time and time again. So if he gets frustrated with Putin, if he doesn't trust Putin, then we are in a situation whereby Putin should take it seriously. And I firmly believe that one of the few people in this world that can end this war, broker a ceasefire, is President Trump. And the reason is very simple. Putin is afraid of him. And we'll see how it'll end.
But did he tell you that there is more pressure coming on Russia?
We'll see what comes in the next few days. I mean, I can only say what I recommended, and my recommendation was that we would have a solid deadline for the ceasefire, which would be the 20th of April. Why? 2 reasons. One, it's Easter. And the second one is that's the third month of his inauguration. So symbolically, it would be quite useful. But that needs to be combined with a colossal set of sanctions if Russia doesn't abide by a fully fledged, unconditional ceasefire. And of course, Lindsey Graham was playing golf with us, the senator, who has now put forward a rather robust sanctions package in the Senate together with Republican Blumenthal, and that will now move to the Congress. So, we'll see. Again, I come back to it. In diplomacy, you have good days, you have bad days, and we'll see where this ends.
This is connected to that. You recently said that it is time to be hard, not soft with Russia.
Always. You have to understand that in Russian, there's a saying that if you have a bayonet, so basically a sword, and you push and it's soft, push it through. If it's hard, pull back. And I think we need to show toughness. The only thing that Putin understands is power. Show any kind of weakness or softness and he'll use you.
And what exactly can drive him to agree on any ceasefire?
Sanction and American leadership. That's the only thing that can do it. Putin respects power. He's afraid of power. If you show that to him, he will abide.
In the first days of the war, I understand that you had a last try to stop all that. You texted Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia. What was his response?
Well, for the record, I was a humble professor at the European University Institute in Florence, and I had completely left politics. I still had Lavrov's number, so I texted him on the 27th of February 2022, and I said, Sergei, this has gone too far. Please stop this madness. You're the only one who can influence him. And the answer was quite cynical. The answer was, do you mean Biden or Zelensky? So that's typical Lavrov. I know him from many years back. And of course, then there was a long exchange that we had, which pretty much pushed the Russian narrative of the war. And that's when I understood that there was no going back, that Ukraine needed to fight back. And of course they did. One of the legendary statements that we heard from President Zelensky, who in my mind is very courageous, he said, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. And of course, now we've been through this war in 3 years.
Are you still in touch with Lavrov?
Oh, no. That was the only time I texted him as again, from the professorial world. In Finland, we have no political connection whatsoever with Russia on the top level. We have diplomatic relations and, we have practical relations with border guards and others, but no political contacts. I don't think there's any need for that.
France and the UK currently propose a so-called reassurance force, which means European soldiers potentially in Ukraine to back up a future peace deal. Do you believe this would be a credible deterrence against a future Russian aggression?
I don't think that is the aim of it. So basically, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding now. We need to set this straight. So you have two phases. First, you have a ceasefire. Ceasefire is still a state of war, right? And that needs monitoring. So you have different technological ways of doing it, etc., etc. Secondly, you have a peace agreement. And with that peace agreement comes peacekeeping. And in my mind, it's very simple. The biggest responsibility is with the Ukrainians. It is the Ukrainian army. Remember, that is 800,000 men and women. They're the most modern, most capable, and most experienced military in the world. After that comes some kind of European support. And then we can do it in so many different ways. It could be about air defense. It could be about the sea. It could be about cyber. And of course, troops are possible as well for monitoring things. But then the final backstop should come from the United States, because I think American security is still the most powerful one. I think the only way in which we can have a lasting and just peace is that there should be some kind of a mechanism that if Russia attacks again, then Ukraine automatically joins NATO.
Would you be ready? Would Finland be ready to send troops to Ukraine?
That's not a question that we deal with right now, because you have two levels of planning. One is military planning and the other one is political planning. And remember that Finland has 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia, and we should think about it mentally as a border which starts in northern Lapland in Norway and goes 5,000 kilometers all the way through the Baltics and down to Ukraine. So we all have different responsibilities. I stress the fact that a so-called contingency or boots on the ground from Europe will be somewhere between 20,000, perhaps 60,000, and that's not going to, make a difference. So this has become sort of this symbolic debate, which I think has been completely sidetracked. There's so many ways in which we are going to continue to help Ukraine. Boots on the ground is not something that we have on the table at the moment.
How did actually Trump respond to your idea of putting pressure on Russia and the NATO idea with Ukraine? This is the first time I hear that.
Actually, the NATO idea with Ukraine comes from Lindsey Graham, who is very close to President Trump. And as far as the ceasefire deadline is concerned, we shall see how the President of the United States reacts. You can see that he's very active. Every day there's something new, and we'll see whether he jumps on it. We don't know yet.
You have been lobbying for a European special envoy to Ukraine for a couple of weeks. Why is there still no solution on that?
Well, there sort of is. So my argument is that Europe needs a team and a special envoy, just like the US has, just like Ukraine has, and just like Russia has. And the proposal that I put forward in Paris last week on Thursday was that I think the leadership should be taken by France and the UK, so Macron and Starmer, and then when Germany gets a new government, Merz would join that. So we would have first a duet of an envoy and then a triumvirate of an envoy, because I think, the big countries should take the lead on this. We smaller countries like Finland, Norway, we can help and support in the background.
I saw an interview where you said you want to see the new German government with some skin in the game. I think that was your quote. What is your expectation?
Oh, very high. First of all, I think we should look at this from the long perspective. So we have seen a Zeitenwende, which at times, I admit, has been a little bit of a Zeitenslalom, but now we have seen a colossal decision from the Bundestag in increasing defense expenditure. And we will see the leadership of future Chancellor Merz as being very steadfast. He's extremely pro-European. He knows how to deal with Russia. He's a transatlanticist. So a lot of us are putting a lot of hope into Merz right now. In many ways, without putting too much pressure on him, say he's in a sort of Helmut Kohl moment. I think that's what we're all expecting from him when he comes to power.
That's big. You have spent 4 years writing a book about the New World Order, which you define as a triangle of power: the global West, the global East, the global South. Do you need to revise this categorization given the fact that the new US government is actively reapproaching Russia at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, interesting enough, I started writing the book when President Trump ended his first term, and I finished writing the book when President Trump started his second term. And of course, I've now, handed in the manuscript to the publishers, and I did rework the conclusions to put in a new, few different scenarios. But I think the thesis still holds. So the basic idea is you have the global West that wants to preserve at least the remnants of the world order because it's in their interest, the UN. The global East, led by China, which kind of wants to change it. Russia follows it. And the one that's going to decide where the world tilts, it's actually been the global South. But of course, now with the new US administration, which is more transactional, perhaps a little bit less multilateral, there might be different scenarios emerging. But I never think that foreign policy is binary. So it's not either or. I think we Europeans need to convince to the United States that multilateralism is good, and if they want to preserve world leadership, which I think they do, and if they want to juxtapose China, which I think they do, then they need allies and they need multilateral rules and institutions. It's a little bit of an uphill battle, but the thesis still holds.
Is reapproaching Russia any future plan for Europe too?
In the long run, but that will be determined about, is there a ceasefire? When will peace negotiations begin? So we're now, I think, in a state whereby we have agreed amongst European leaders that at some stage there will be a reach out, but that has to be coordinated. And in my humble opinion, it should come from a close coordination among allies, but including, of course, especially France, the UK, and then eventually Germany.
What does the transformation of the transatlantic alliance, some say the dissolution of this alliance, mean for Europe in the new world order you describe?
Sure. I think we need to do at least 3 things. The first one is we need to forge good bilateral relations with the United States. Finland does it. We have icebreakers. We've taken care of our defense. We have good technology. So we are on the good side in the American books. But we need to work on it. So post the reverse Kennedy question. Ask not what America can do for you, but ask what you can do for America. Secondly, we need to be united inside the European Union. And of course, when there are tariffs and other protectionist measures coming up, it's going to be the European Union, especially the Commission and Ursula von der Leyen, who basically negotiates for us. And the third thing we need to do is to convince the Americans that European security and NATO as the alliance is in their vested interests. And if you work on these 3 things, I think, we'll get results.
At the moment, Trump and his government are more acting like a rival to Europe. They now put sweeping tariffs also on Europe. How should be our response?
Don't take it personally. That's the first thing. A lot of people get extremely upset, and I understand why people get upset. But for foreign policy, that's not a good idea. You need to sort of detach emotion from it and think of, okay, this is a reality that we're dealing in. And then you ask yourself, what do you do? And of course, engage. I mean, in my experience, having spent 7 hours with President Trump, my advice to all of our allies is engage with the United States. Engage with President Trump and his administration. And I would not say that the US is acting as an adversary. What the US is doing is going America first. My suggestion, of course, is that let's work and make sure that Europe is second for the United States. Because, of course, on tariffs, I mean, it wasn't only Europe-based. It was in India, it was in Vietnam, Cambodia. It was everywhere around the world.
It was your lifelong mission to bring Finland into NATO. Now there are serious doubts across Europe about the reliability of Article 5 under the new Trump government. Are you truly convinced that Trump would send American troops to defend a Finnish border town like Nirala or another border town in Estonia?
I am truly convinced that the United States will remain engaged in NATO and committed to Article 5 because it's in their vested interest. There's a reason why the United States has forged a DCA, Defense Cooperation Agreement, with Finland, which basically allows it to store a lot of military equipment and material in Finland. There's a reason why thousands and thousands of American soldiers do training here with Finnish soldiers, Marines and otherwise. And the reason is that the United States sees the strategic importance of Finland to them. It is Finland, Sweden, and Norway which basically take care of the northern flank, and we take care of 1,340 kilometers of border with Russia. So if and when it is in the interest of the United States to defend us as part of the alliance, I have no worries about it.
According to a secret Pentagon document obtained by the Washington Post, the US is, quote, unlikely to provide substantial, if any, support to Europe in the event of a Russian attack. What does this mean for us?
One, I haven't seen the document. Two, what we have to understand is that American defense is changing tack. So there will be more focus on the Indo-Pacific. But with that focus, the key here is not so much the troops that exist in Europe right now, about 100,000 Americans. It is about material. What kind of intelligence? What kind of reconnaissance? What kind of air force, etc., etc. Let's just work with the Americans. And we're sort of, falling into this negative spiral that the Americans are leaving. It's not going to be either or. It's going to be both. But what we need to do, and I think the United States, President Trump are correct on this, we need to take care, more responsibility for our own security, including increasing defense expenditure. We have one of the largest militaries in Europe, and we don't have it because we're worried about Stockholm, and we don't have it because we feel that the Americans need to be here all the time, but we have it because it is in our self-interest. And we just increased our defense expenditure up to 3% by 2029. If you add on to that the fact that we still have obligatory military service, we're actually talking 3.5%. We do it because it's in our vested self-interest.
Finland and Germany both ordered F-35 fighter jets, in your case 64 of them. Have you ever considered canceling this order?
No. Why should we? When military planning goes decades ahead. And remember that the United States, including the President of the United States, does deals. Europe pays twice as much for American military industry, buys twice as much stuff as the United States itself. So I intend to go and see the delivery of the first F-35, hopefully together with the President of the United States, sometime later this fall, this year.
I also asked this question because the US government has openly threatened to take over Greenland. They do not exclude military force.
I think they exclude military force. And in any case, to be very honest, for Finland, this case is very simple. And that is that Greenland is a part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and the future of Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders themselves.
Did you talk to Trump about that?
We didn't talk about Greenland this time around. We focused on two things. One was our bilateral relationship, including icebreakers, and the other one was the war in Ukraine. You don't want to saturate an agenda at a first date.
Your grandparents and your father came from Karelia, as I understand it. This is a territory which was partially lost to Russia. How does this influence your view and approach towards the Kremlin?
I think Karelia is very close to the hearts of most Finns because it is part of our history and it's a part of our identity. And I think the fact that we've had 30 wars or skirmishes with Russia since the 1300s, and the one which is in our cognitive memory is the Winter War and the War of Continuation and the Peace of Stalin. Surely it has an influence. I think we've always been very realistic about Russia. So we have two sides to it. One is that we have to prepare in order to avoid war. That's why we have the large military. And the other one is that in good times, you can still cooperate with Russia. So we're very pragmatic with Russia, and we were with the Soviet Union. But of course, right now, we don't have any relations with Russia for rather obvious reasons.
And you closed your border. The German army and the German intelligence agencies are strongly warning at the moment of a new Russian attack on Europe within the next 3 to 4 years. 2028, 2029 is always the time frame. How do you assess the Russian threat right now and this German assessment?
Well, first of all, we do not have an imminent military threat coming from Russia. And there's reason for that. We have obligatory military service. 900,000 men and women have done it, including myself, and my son finished his last summer. We have 62 F-18s. We bought 64 F-35s. We have long-range missiles, land, sea, and air. And we have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. So we're prepared. So my recommendation to all kinds of assessments, stop predicting the future because we don't know what happens. Prepare for the worst. That means that it won't happen. So focus on hiking up your own military, on buying military equipment, on having a strong military, and then nothing bad will happen.
You mentioned this in the beginning. The best defense for Europe at the moment is the Ukrainian army with its soldiers. I see it myself when I travel to the front lines all the time. You talked to President Zelensky after your visit to Mar-a-Lago. Can you share with us a little bit what did you talk about and what could you tell him too?
I mean, normal diplomacy. So what happens quite often is that you try to have an impact. So you exchange information, usually very constructively. So I was able to convey some messages from President Zelensky to President Trump. And then I was able to convey some messages from President Trump to President Zelensky. And, you know, one of the things that I always stress is that Ukraine has one of the most modern and efficient and experienced militaries in the world right now, and especially in Europe. And the simple example I give, and I'm sure you've seen this on the front lines as well, that 3 years ago, Ukraine produced 0 drones. Last year, they produced 1.5 million drones. This year, they will produce 4.5 million drones. This is a country which is far ahead of Germany or Finland in terms of modern warfare. Let's learn from the Ukrainians.
Do you have hope that there will be peace this year?
I'm hopeful, and that's what we work towards. I think President Trump is very adamant to get peace. As you can see, President Zelensky wants peace, and Europeans want peace. There's only one country that does not want peace, and that is Russia. That's why we need to put maximum pressure on Russia in terms of sanctions, in terms of using the frozen assets, in terms of equipping Ukraine to its teeth with military equipment, in terms of making sure that Ukraine becomes a member of the European Union and then eventually NATO as well.
Last question because of the current news. In the wake of leaving the Ottawa Convention, is the era of arms control basically dead?
It's not dead, and we need to come back to it, but we can see a nuclear arms race beginning again. And we are seeing, of course, another arms race. On the Ottawa Agreement and on landmines, I want to stress the fact that landmines used responsibly, as with the country of Finland, are not a threat. Because what happens is that we produce them, we stock them, and if we ever need them against the Russian invasion, then we can put them down in 24 hours. But we map them and we take them out.
President Stubb, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.